In a small, picturesque town surrounded by rolling hills, there lived a man named Ethan. Known for his sharp wit and undeniable talent as a craftsman, Ethan had one glaring flaw. He held grudges like a chain that weighed heavily on his soul. Years ago, his closest friend, Daniel, had betrayed his trust by taking credit for one of Ethan's most brilliant creations, a clock so exquisite it was said to capture the rhythm of life itself. The betrayal shattered their bond, and Ethan swore never to forgive. For years, Ethan buried himself in his work, crafting intricate pieces of art while his heart remained a fortress of resentment. His reputation grew, but so did the bitterness that clouded his life. One fateful day, a stranger arrived in town, a soft-spoken, elderly woman named Clara. She had heard of Ethan's extraordinary clocks and asked him to craft one for her, but with a peculiar condition. The clock must reflect the essence of forgiveness. Forgiveness? Ethan scoffed, unwilling to even entertain the idea. Yet Clara's piercing gaze and enigmatic smile unsettled him. Reluctantly, he agreed, hoping to prove that forgiveness was a fantasy unworthy of his art. As Ethan began his work, he found himself haunted by memories of Daniel and the betrayal. Every tick of the clock seemed to echo his pain. Frustrated, he tossed his tools aside and visited Clara, hoping to rid himself of her strange request. When he arrived at Clara's modest home, she greeted him warmly and invited him to sit. "Forgiveness is not for the weak, Ethan," she said softly, pouring him a cup of tea. "It's for those who want to set themselves free." Ethan shook his head. "Why should I forgive someone who wronged me? It changes nothing." Clara leaned closer. "Forgiveness doesn't absolve the other person. It frees you. Imagine your anger as a stone you carry. Over time, it only weighs you down, while the one who wronged you walks unburdened." Her words lingered with Ethan, though he refused to admit it. As days turned into weeks, he returned to crafting the clock, this time pouring his confusion, pain, and reluctant hope into every gear and dial. Slowly, the clock began to take shape, a masterpiece unlike any he had ever made. Finally, the clock was complete. When Ethan presented it to Clara, she smiled knowingly. "This clock reflects more than forgiveness," she said. "It reflects your journey toward healing." Ethan felt a strange sense of relief wash over him, but his lesson was far from complete. Clara then handed him a folded letter. Confused, he opened it and froze. The letter was from Daniel. It turned out Daniel had been searching for Ethan for years, desperate to apologize. The letter detailed his regret and shame over what he had done, and how he had fallen into ruin because of his own guilt. Overwhelmed, Ethan realized that while he had spent years harboring anger, Daniel had carried a burden just as heavy. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he whispered, "He carried his own stone all along." That day, Ethan sought out Daniel. Their meeting was raw and emotional, filled with tears, apologies, and an unspoken understanding. Ethan forgave, not just for Daniel, but for himself. The lesson: this story teaches us that forgiveness is not a gift to the one who wronged us. It is a gift to ourselves. By forgiving, we free our hearts from the chains of resentment and allow healing to take root. Just as Ethan's clock symbolized the passage of time, it also reminded him, and us, that holding on to anger only wastes the precious moments we could spend in peace. Forgiveness may not erase the past, but it can illuminate the future, freeing us to live without the weight of bitterness.